The midnight silence was broken only by the soft ticking of the bedside clock as Michael Reynolds twisted in his sheets, trapped in the grip of a recurring nightmare. In his dream, he was once again in the passenger seat, the rain pelting against the windshield as Sarah drove them home from their anniversary dinner. He could see her smile, hear her laugh, and then the blinding headlights, the screech of tires on wet asphalt, and the deafening crash that changed everything. Michael bolted upright, his heart pounding against his ribs, the cotton t-shirt clinging to his sweat-soaked back. 3 years had passed since the accident took Sarah from him, but the dreams still came, especially on nights when the responsibilities of being both mother and father to their daughter felt overwhelming. A soft knock on the door drew his attention. 7-year-old Emily stood in the doorway, her teddy bear clutched to her chest, blonde curls framing her face in the dim light from the hallway. "Bad dream again, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Michael pushed the damp hair from his forehead and nodded, making room on the bed as Emily climbed up beside him. She settled against his side with the natural ease of a child who had become accustomed to comforting as much as being comforted. "Mom is still here with us," Emily said, placing her small hand over Michael's heart. "Right here," she told me in my dreams. Michael wrapped his arm around his daughter, marveling at the wisdom that sometimes emerged from her. At moments like these, he could see Sarah in their daughter's eyes, in the thoughtful tilt of her head, in the way she seemed to understand things far beyond her years. "You're right, Em," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Your mom is always with us." They sat in comfortable silence until Emily's breathing slowed, signaling she had drifted back to sleep. Michael gently tucked her into his bed and watched her for a moment, the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. Tomorrow would bring another day of balancing the garage, bills, and being everything Emily needed. But for now, in the quiet darkness, he allowed himself to remember the life he once had and the one he was trying to build from its ashes. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Reynolds Restoration and Repair as Michael rolled up the large bay door. The familiar smells of motor oil, metal, and the faint hint of leather from the vintage cars he specialized in restoring filled the air. This garage had become his sanctuary, a place where broken things could be made whole again, even if the same couldn't be said for broken hearts. "Morning, Mr. Reynolds," called Hank, the elderly man who lived next door and often stopped by to admire the classic cars. "Got that '67 Mustang firing on all cylinders yet?" Michael smiled, wiping his hands on a shop rag tucked into his belt. "Almost there, Hank. Just waiting on a carburetor part that should arrive today." The garage was modest compared to the high-end auto shops downtown, but what it lacked in size and polish, it made up for in heart and skill. Vintage photographs of classic American cars lined the walls, alongside certificates that spoke to Michael's past life as an automotive engineer for one of Detroit's biggest manufacturers. Tools were meticulously organized on pegboards, each with its rightful place, a system that had served him well since he left the corporate world to open this place after Sarah's death. As he began his morning routine of checking the previous day's work, Michael's mind drifted to the medical bills stacked on his desk at home. Emily's congenital heart condition required surgery, an operation that insurance would only partially cover, leaving him with a mountain of debt he wasn't sure how to climb. The specialist had been clear. The procedure couldn't wait much longer than 6 months. Michael ran his hand along the smooth curve of the Mustang's fender, the cool metal grounding him. Cars made sense to him. They were complex but logical. When something broke, you identified the problem, found the right parts, and fixed it. Life's problems weren't so straightforward. He reached for a socket wrench, ready to lose himself in the meditative rhythm of mechanical work, when the bell above the door jingled. A man in an expensive suit entered, looking out of place among the grease and grime of the working garage. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm David Mercer, representing Westfield Developments." The man extended a hand that Michael hesitantly shook, noting the contrast between his own calloused fingers and the visitor's manicured nails. "What can I do for you, Mr. Mercer?" Michael asked, though a sinking feeling in his stomach that told him this wasn't about car repair. "I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Mrs. Lancaster. As you may know, your lease on this space comes up for renewal in 60 days. Mercer's smile didn't reach his eyes as he handed Michael an envelope. Westfield Developments has made an offer to purchase this entire block for a new commercial development. Mrs. Lancaster has accepted our offer, contingent on delivering the properties vacant. Michael stared at the envelope, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. This garage wasn't just his livelihood, it was his connection to Sarah, who had encouraged him to follow his passion for restoration. It was Emily's second home, where she did homework at a small desk in the office and learned to identify tools and car parts. It was the place he had rebuilt himself after his world collapsed. "So I'm being evicted?" The words tasted bitter in Michael's mouth. "Not exactly," Mercer replied smoothly. "Your lease isn't being renewed. There's a difference, legally speaking. Mrs. Lancaster asked me to express her gratitude for your years as a tenant. Westfield is prepared to offer relocation assistance, a finder's fee for a new location perhaps." Michael opened the envelope to find formal notice of the lease termination, along with a glossy brochure showing renderings of a sleek, modern shopping center where his garage and the surrounding buildings currently stood. The plan showed no space for a small, independent auto shop amid the high-end boutiques and trendy restaurants. "I'll need some time to think about this," Michael said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Of course," Mercer nodded, checking his watch. "You have 60 days, Mr. Reynolds. I suggest you use them wisely." With that, he left, the bell jingling with false cheerfulness in his wake. Michael slumped onto a nearby stool, the envelope clutched in his hand. As he set it down, his eyes fell on an old drawer he'd been meaning to clean out, one of many projects perpetually pushed to tomorrow. Something about Mercer's visit compelled him to open it now. Inside, beneath stacks of old invoices and parts catalogs, he found a yellow document with the faded emblem of Route 66. It was a property record he'd discovered when he first leased the place, but had forgotten about in the chaos of building his business. Michael examined it briefly before setting it aside, a problem for another day when the pressing reality of possibly losing his garage wasn't staring him in the face. Across town, in a sleek, high-rise office building that seemed worlds away from Michael's garage, Olivia Bennett sat at her glass desk, reviewing contracts with laser-focused attention. At 35, she had become one of the most respected corporate attorneys at Bennett and Carter Law, the firm her grandfather had founded decades ago. Her corner office offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a daily reminder of how far she had come and how much she had sacrificed to get there. "Ms. Bennett, your brother is on line 1, her assistant's voice announced through the intercom. Olivia sighed, setting down her pen. Alexander Bennett, CEO of Westfield Developments and her older brother by 3 years, rarely called with good news these days. Their relationship had grown increasingly complicated as his business practices became more aggressive. "Alex, I'm in the middle of preparing for the Harrington deposition," she said, skipping pleasantries. "Hello to you too, Liv," Alexander's smooth voice replied. "I need the paperwork for the Riverside District acquisition expedited. Victor Crane is getting impatient, and you know how he gets when deals stall." Olivia frowned, pulling up the file on her computer. The Riverside District, a charming area of small businesses that had been serving the community for generations, was Alexander's latest target for revitalization, a euphemism for replacing family-owned shops with upscale chains that could afford the rent hikes that inevitably followed. "The environmental impact statement is still pending, Alex. We can't move forward without it." "Find a way to work around it," he replied dismissively. "That's what I pay the firm for. The last piece of property is proving difficult. Some mechanic who doesn't understand the concept of progress. I need this wrapped up cleanly." "You mean legally," Olivia corrected, her voice cooling. "I'll review the contracts, but I won't cut corners, not even for family." Alexander's laugh held no warmth. "Always the idealist, Liv. Just get it done by the end of the week. Oh, and Mom wants you to bring Madison to Sunday dinner. Don't be late this time." The call ended before she could respond, leaving Olivia with a familiar tension headache building behind her eyes. She glanced at the silver-framed photograph on her desk, her daughter Madison in ballet attire, beaming after her first recital. Guilt washed over her as she realized she'd missed 2 practices this week already. The divorce 2 years ago had been brutal. Discovering her husband's affair with his 26-year-old secretary was painful enough, but his attempt to leverage her career against her in the custody battle had shown her just how little he had ever respected her work. In the end, she had won primary custody of Madison, But the victory often felt hollow on nights when case files kept her at the office while her daughter ate dinner with the nanny. Olivia checked her watch and cursed softly. She had promised to drive Madison to school today. Her daughter's 7th birthday present had been a whole day with Mommy, starting with a breakfast they'd shared at Madison's favorite diner and a rare mother-daughter drive to school in her grandfather's restored Mercedes. Gathering her files into her leather briefcase, Olivia hurried out, instructing her assistant to reschedule her morning meetings. As the elevator descended, she mentally rehearsed her apology to Madison, adding it to the growing collection of moments she wished she could do over. In the parking garage, Olivia approached the gleaming 1960 Mercedes 220 SE Cabriolet that had been her grandfather Thomas Bennett's pride and joy. The classic car, with its elegant lines and butter-soft leather interior, was one of the few personal indulgences she allowed herself. Driving it connected her to her grandfather, the one person in her family who had encouraged her to follow her heart rather than family expectations. Madison was waiting in the lobby of their luxury apartment building, her dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail, small fingers clutching the straps of a backpack almost as big as she was. The disappointment in her eyes when she spotted her mother was quickly masked with the kind of practiced understanding no 7-year-old should have perfected. "I know, Mom," Madison said before Olivia could speak. "Important case, it's okay." "No, it's not okay," Olivia replied, kneeling to meet her daughter's eyes. "But I'm here now and we're going to have that drive to school I promised. Then I'll pick you up this afternoon and we'll do something special. Just us." Madison's smile brightened slightly. "Can we take the special car?" "Absolutely. Grandpa's Mercedes is waiting for us." As they drove through the city streets, Madison chatted about her latest art project and the friendship bracelet she was making for her best friend. Olivia tried to focus on her daughter's words, but Alexander's demands and the looming Harrington deposition kept intruding. She had built her career on meticulous preparation, and today's scheduled disruption meant working through dinner. Again. "Mom, you're doing that thing with your eyebrows," Madison observed, interrupting Olivia's mental to-do list. "What thing, sweetheart?" "When you're thinking about work instead of listening. Dad used to call it your lawyer face." The innocent comment stung, a reminder of how perceptive children could be, and how much of herself she revealed despite her best efforts to compartmentalize. "I'm sorry, Maddie. Tell me more about this bracelet. What colors are you using?" They were approaching Madison's private school when the car's engine made an ominous sound, followed by a series of sputters. The Mercedes, typically as reliable as it was beautiful, began to slow despite Olivia's pressure on the accelerator. Warning lights illuminated the dashboard as the vehicle rolled to a stop half a block from the school gates. "What's happening?" Madison asked, eyes wide. "I'm not sure, honey," Olivia replied, trying the ignition again, with no success. "But don't worry, we'll figure it out." Pulling out her phone, Olivia called the luxury car service she used for the Mercedes, only to learn that their specialized mechanic was on another call and couldn't reach her for at least 2 hours. Frustration mounted as she realized this delay would cascade through her entire schedule, potentially jeopardizing the Harrington prep work. "You should go to school, Maddie," Olivia said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "We can walk from here and I'll deal with the car later." "But Mom, what about Grandpa's car? You always say it's special." Olivia looked at her daughter, struck by the genuine concern in her eyes. Madison was right. This wasn't just any car. It was her grandfather's legacy, the vehicle he had lovingly maintained until Parkinson's had taken the steadiness from his hands. The thought of leaving it on the street felt wrong, almost disrespectful to his memory. "You're right," Olivia conceded. "Let me make a few calls and see if there's someone who can help us sooner." As she spoke with a second service provider and received the same 2-hour estimate, Olivia noticed a man walking past, his attention caught by the distinctive lines of the vintage Mercedes. He slowed, his experienced eye clearly assessing the vehicle with appreciation rather than casual interest. The man was in his mid-30s with the solid build of someone who worked with his hands. His worn jeans and gray t-shirt bearing a logo she couldn't quite make out contrasted sharply with the business attire of the parents dropping children off at the prestigious school. Yet there was something in his confident posture and the intelligent assessment in his eyes that made Olivia hesitate to dismiss him as just another passerby. "Excuse me," he called, approaching the car with a respectful distance. "Having trouble with your Mercedes?" Olivia's initial wariness, a reflex developed through years of city living, was tempered by the genuine concern in his voice. Yes, it just stopped running. The service company can't get here for 2 hours. The man nodded, hands resting comfortably at his sides. I'm Michael Reynolds. I own Reynolds Restoration and Repair about 5 blocks from here. I specialize in classic cars, particularly German models from this era. Would you mind if I took a look? Olivia hesitated, years of cautious living warring with practical necessity. Madison, however, has no such reservations. Can you fix Grandpa's car, Mr. Reynolds? She asked, leaning out the passenger window. It's my mom's favorite thing in the whole world. Michael smiled at the little girl, his expression softening. Well, I'd certainly like to try. These old Mercedes are special machines. They don't make them like this anymore. Something in his tone, a genuine reverence for the craftsmanship of the vehicle, convinced Olivia. That would be very kind, Mr. Reynolds. I'm Olivia Bennett, and this is my daughter, Madison. Michael nodded politely and moved to the front of the car. May I? He asked, gesturing to the hood. Of course, Viteshno. With practiced ease, he released the hood latch and propped it open, revealing the immaculately maintained engine beneath. His hands moved with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the mechanics, checking connections and examining components. When did you last drive it? He asked, glancing back at Olivia. About a week ago. It's been running perfectly. Michael nodded, continuing his inspection. Whoever's been maintaining this has done an excellent job. These W128 cabriolets are rare. There were only about 1,100 made. Is this the original Einspritz motor fuel injection system? Olivia blinked, surprised by his specific knowledge. Yes, my grandfather insisted on keeping it as authentic as possible. He imported parts from Germany when needed. Your grandfather had excellent taste, Michael remarked, a note of genuine admiration in his voice. After a few more minutes of examination, he straightened. Good news. It's just a loose connection to the fuel pump. The vibration from driving probably jarred it free. I can have you running again in about 5 minutes if you'll allow me. Relief washed over Olivia. Please, go ahead. Madison watched with fascination as Michael retrieved a small tool pouch from his back pocket and set to work with efficient movements. His hands were strong and sure, moving with the precision of someone who understood exactly what they were doing. Do you fix a lot of cars, Mr. Reynolds? Madison asked, clearly impressed. Every day, Michael replied with a smile. It's what I love to do. My grandpa loved his car, Madison continued. Mom says he used to talk to it like it was a person. Michael chuckled. Smart man, these machines have personalities. You have to listen to them, understand what they're trying to tell you. He made a final adjustment and closed the hood with care. All right, Ms. Bennett, would you try starting it now? Olivia turned the key and the engine immediately roared to life, settling into the smooth purr that was so familiar and comforting. The relief on her face was evident as she looked up at Michael. Mr. Reynolds, you've saved our morning. What do I owe you for this rescue? Michael waved a hand dismissively. Nothing at all. It was a simple fix, and it's a privilege to work on a car like this. He paused, admiring the vehicle once more. If you'd like, I could give you my card. These older models sometimes need specialized attention that general service centers don't provide. I would appreciate that, Olivia replied, genuinely grateful. She checked her watch, realizing they were now running late. Madison, we need to get you to school. Can Mr. Reynolds come to dinner at our house? Madison asked suddenly, her expression bright with the unfiltered directness of childhood. To say thank you for fixing Grandpa's car. Olivia felt a flush of embarrassment at her daughter's forwardness. Madison, Mr. Reynolds is busy with his own work. We shouldn't impose. Michael seemed momentarily taken aback by the invitation, his eyes briefly meeting Olivia's before he smiled at Madison. That's very kind of you to offer, Madison. Your mom is right, though. I'm sure you both have busy schedules. Madison's face fell slightly. But Grandpa always said we should thank people properly when they help us, especially when it's something important. Michael and Olivia shared a look of mutual understanding, the kind that passes between adults navigating a child's earnestness. There was something in his eyes, a warmth perhaps, or a recognition, that made Olivia hesitate. Mr. Reynolds, she heard herself saying, Madison is right, we would be honored if you would join us for dinner sometime, as a proper thank you. The invitation surprised them both, bridging the clear social divide between them. Michael in his work clothes with grease-stained hands, and Olivia in her tailored suit and pearls, representatives of worlds that rarely intersected meaningfully. This car was my grandfather's pride and joy, Olivia continued, finding herself wanting to explain. He left it to me when he passed away last year. It's one of the few things I have that connects me to him. So this wasn't just any repair. It means a great deal to me. Michael nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. In that case, I'd be happy to accept, though I should warn you, I usually come with a +1. My daughter Emily is about Madison's age. Madison's eyes lit up. She can come too. We can show her my art room while the grown-ups talk about boring stuff. Olivia laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. It's settled then. Would Friday evening work? Say, 7 o'clock? Michael hesitated, and Olivia could see him mentally rearranging something. Friday at 7 would be fine. Should I bring anything? Just yourselves, Olivia replied, writing her address on the back of her business card and handing it to him. She accepted his card in return, noting the simple logo of Reynolds Restoration and Repair. As Madison waved goodbye to Michael and they pulled away toward the school, Olivia found herself wondering about the man who had so easily fixed her grandfather's OR and why the thought of Friday's dinner made her both nervous and, unexpectedly, a little excited. Mom, Madison said thoughtfully as they approached the school, Mr. Reynolds seems nice. Not like Dad's friends who always talk about money and boring stuff. He knows about things that matter. Olivia glanced at her perceptive daughter. And what matters, according to Madison Bennett? The little girl considered the question with a seriousness that sometimes startled Olivia. Taking care of special things, like how you take care of me, and how Mr. Reynolds takes care of old cars that people love. As they pulled up to the school entrance, Olivia leaned over to kiss Madison's forehead. You're pretty wise for someone who still sleeps with a nightlight, you know that? Madison grinned, gathering her backpack. That's what Grandpa always said, too. Watching her daughter join the stream of uniformed children entering the school, Olivia sat for a moment in the idling Mercedes, feeling the vibration of the engine Thomas Bennett had so loved. Her schedule was in disarray. Her brother was pressuring her about contracts she wasn't comfortable with, and she had just invited a stranger to dinner. Yet somehow, for the first time in months, something felt right, as if the universe had momentarily aligned to remind her that life wasn't just about contracts and deadlines and maintaining appearances. Sometimes it was about loose connections that needed to be tightened, in engines and perhaps in hearts as well. Have you ever had a chance encounter that changed the course of your life? A moment where you looked back and realized that if one small thing had been different, if you'd left 5 minutes earlier, taken another route, or ignored that feeling that made you stop and help someone, your entire future would have unfolded differently? Life has a funny way of bringing people together at exactly the right moment, doesn't it? Let us know in the comments if you've experienced one of these pivotal meetings that seemed like chance but felt like destiny. Friday evening arrived faster than Michael had anticipated. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, he adjusted the collar of his navy button-down shirt, the newest item in his wardrobe, purchased specifically for tonight's dinner. Emily sat on the closed toilet lid beside him, swinging her legs and watching him with curious eyes. Why are you so nervous, Daddy? She asked, tilting her head. Is it because the lady is rich? Michael paused mid-motion, caught off guard by his daughter's directness. What makes you think Ms. Bennett is rich? Emily rolled her eyes with the exaggerated patience of a child explaining something obvious. You said she has a fancy old car and lives in the tall buildings downtown. And you made me wear my church dress. She tugged at the hem of her floral dress, which they both knew she only wore on special occasions. I'm not nervous, Michael insisted, though the slight tremor in his hands as he combed his hair suggested otherwise. And we're dressing nicely because it's polite when someone invites you to dinner. The truth was more complicated than he wanted to admit, even to himself. When he'd entered the address Olivia had given him into his phone, he discovered she lived in the Monarch, one of the most exclusive residential buildings in the city, where monthly HOA fees probably exceeded his garage's rent. The realization had created a knot of anxiety in his stomach that had been growing all week. We don't have to go, Emily said, suddenly serious. We could stay home and watch movies instead. Michael knelt down to meet his daughter's eyes, recognizing the insecurity behind her suggestion. Since Sarah's death, they had become a self-contained unit, rarely venturing outside their comfortable routine of garage, school, and home. This dinner represented something new and unknown for both of them. Madison seemed really excited to meet you, he said gently, and I think you might like her too. Plus, I promised to help Ms. Bennett if she has any more car troubles. A Reynolds always keeps their word, right? Emily nodded solemnly. That's what Mom used to say. That's right. Michael stood, offering his hand. Ready for an adventure, Em? Ready, she agreed, her small hand fitting perfectly in his. The drive to the Monarch took them from their modest neighborhood of small homes and family-owned businesses to the gleaming high-rises of downtown. As the garage came into view, with its uniformed attendant and polished floors that seemed too nice for actual cars, Michael felt increasingly out of place in his 12-year-old Ford pickup. The attendant, however, was politely professional, directing them to a visitor's space with no indication that the truck didn't belong among the luxury vehicles surrounding it. In the elevator, Michael noticed Emily's wide-eyed reflection in the mirrored walls as they ascended to the 32nd floor. It's like a castle in the sky, she whispered, pressing her face to the glass wall that offered a panoramic view of the city lights below. The elevator opened directly into a private foyer, where a single door was adorned with an elegant brass plaque reading 32A Bennett. Michael took a deep breath before ringing the bell, Emily's hand clutched tightly in his. The door swung open to reveal Madison, her face bright with excitement. You came! Mom, they're here, she called over her shoulder before turning back to them. Hi, Mr. Reynolds. Is this Emily? I like your dress. Do you want to see my art room? I have all kinds of paints and clay and stuff. Before either Michael or Emily could respond, Olivia appeared behind her daughter, placing a gentle hand on Madison's shoulder. Let our guests at least come inside before you whisk Emily away, sweetheart. Michael was struck by the transformation from the polished professional he had met on the street to the woman before him now. Olivia's hair was loose around her shoulders, and she had exchanged her business suit for dark jeans and a simple but elegant sweater. The effect was somehow both more approachable and more beautiful. Welcome to our home, she said, stepping aside to let them enter. I'm so glad you could pay it. The apartment was exactly as impressive as Michael had feared. Open concept and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline. The decor was tasteful and clearly expensive, with original artwork adorning the walls and designer furniture arranged in perfect harmony. Yet there were also touches that spoke of a home rather than a showplace. Children's drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, a well-loved teddy bear forgotten on the sofa, books stacked on coffee tables. Your home is beautiful, Michael said, handing Olivia the bottle of wine he had agonized over selecting. It had been the most expensive one he'd ever purchased, though he suspected it was probably mid-range by her standards. Thank you, Olivia replied, accepting the wine with a genuine smile. And thank you for this. It's one of my favorites, actually. Michael couldn't tell if she was being truthful or just polite, but her warmth seemed authentic. As she invited them further inside, Emily remained partially hidden behind him, her natural shyness reasserting itself in the unfamiliar environment. Madison, however, was not deterred. She approached Emily directly, extending a hand in a gesture that seemed charmingly adult for a 7-year-old. I'm Madison. Do you like to draw? I have some new markers that make sparkly lines. Emily glanced up at Michael, who gave her an encouraging nod. I do like drawing, she said softly, especially cars. My dad teaches me about all the parts. Madison's eyes widened with interest. Really? That's so cool. I only know about my grandpa's car because it's special. Come on, I'll show you my art supplies and you can teach me how to draw cars. The girls disappeared down a hallway, Emily's initial hesitation apparently forgotten in the face of Madison's enthusiastic welcome. Madison has been talking about your visit all week, Olivia said, leading Michael toward the kitchen area where delicious aromas suggested dinner was well underway. I hope you like Italian. I made my grandfather's lasagna recipe. You cooked? Michael asked, then immediately regretted the surprise in his voice. I mean, Olivia laughed, a genuine sound that softened her features. You're wondering if the corporate lawyer who drives a vintage Mercedes knows how to cook? Fair question. The answer is yes, but not as often as I'd like. Cooking was my escape during law school. something tangible and satisfying when everything else was theoretical and stressful. I understand that, Michael replied, relaxing slightly. That's part of why I love restoration work. At the end of the day, there's something real to show for your efforts. As Olivia checked on the lasagna, Michael found his attention drawn to a collection of framed photographs on a nearby shelf. Among family portraits and vacation scenes was a black and white image of a distinguished older man standing proudly beside the same Mercedes he had repaired earlier that week. "Is this your grandfather?" he asked. Olivia joined him, a fond smile touching her lips. "Yes, that's Thomas Bennett with his beloved car. He bought it the year I was born and kept it in perfect condition until Parkinson's made it impossible for him to drive anymore. He taught me to appreciate craftsmanship and the value of taking care of things that matter." "He sounds like a wise man," Michael said, studying the photograph more closely. Something about the background looked vaguely familiar. An old filling station with a distinctive sign, but he couldn't place it. "He was," Olivia replied, a hint of sadness in her voice. "He built Bennett and Carter Law from nothing, but he never let success change his values. He used to say that contracts might make you rich, but character makes you wealthy." She paused, seeming to catch herself. "Sorry, I don't usually get so sentimental with people I've just met." "Don't apologize," Michael said. "It's nice to hear about someone who understood the difference between price and value. That's getting rare these days." Their conversation was interrupted by the oven timer, and Olivia returned to the kitchen while Michael continued exploring the living room. On a side table, he noticed a stack of legal documents, the top page bearing the letterhead of Bennett and Carter Law and the title, Riverside District Acquisition, Phase 3. His blood ran cold as he recognized the project name, the very development threatening his garage. Before he could process this discovery, Olivia called him to dinner. The dining table had been set with care, and the girls were already seated, Madison explaining the finer points of her school's art program to an attentive Emily. Throughout dinner, Michael found himself torn between enjoying the evening and wrestling with the knowledge that Olivia might be involved in the project that could destroy everything he had built. The lasagna was delicious, the conversation flowed easily, and watching Emily come out of her shell with Madison was a joy he hadn't anticipated. Yet the shadow of that document loomed over his thoughts. "Mr. Reynolds, did you always want to fix cars?" Madison asked during a lull in conversation, her head tilted inquisitively. The question pulled Michael back to the present. "Actually, I started out designing them. I was an automotive engineer for Griffin Motors in Detroit before I opened my restoration shop." "Really?" Olivia looked genuinely surprised. "What made you change paths?" Michael hesitated, unsure how much of his story to share. "Life circumstances," he said finally. "After my wife passed away, I needed a more flexible schedule for Emily. And I'd always loved the hands-on work of restoration, bringing something back to its original glory rather than just designing new parts to replace the old." Understanding softened Olivia's expression. "I'm sorry about your wife. That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," Michael acknowledged. "Still is sometimes. But we've found our way, haven't we, Em?" Emily nodded, tomato sauce adorning her chin. "Daddy can fix anything," she said with absolute confidence. "Cars, toasters, my bike, everything except hearts. He says those have to heal on their own." A moment of silence followed this innocent observation, the simple wisdom of it touching everyone at the table. Olivia's eyes met Michael's across the table, a look of recognition passing between them, the shared understanding of loss and rebuilding that transcended their different circumstances. After dinner, the girls returned to Madison's art room, while Michael helped Olivia clear the table, falling into an easy rhythm of cooperation. "Madison seems to be good for Emily," Michael observed, watching his normally reserved daughter chattering animatedly as they disappeared down the hall. "She hasn't connected with another child like this since before Sarah died." "They do seem to have hit it off," Olivia agreed, loading the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. "Madison doesn't have many close friends. Between my work schedule and her father's inconsistent presence, playdates haven't been a priority. I sometimes worry she's too adult for her own good." Michael nodded, understanding all too well. "Emily's the same way. When you're raised around mostly adults, you start to think like one." As they finished the dishes, Olivia offered Michael a tour of the apartment. In Madison's art room, they found the girls deeply engaged in creating a collaborative masterpiece. Emily drawing detailed car outlines that Madison filled with vibrant colors and patterns. "Look, Dad," Emily called excitedly. "Madison is teaching me about complementary colors, and I'm teaching her how to draw us a '57 Chevy." "That's fantastic, Em," Michael replied, genuinely pleased to see his daughter so animated. "You two make a good team." The tour continued to Olivia's home office, a space that reflected her professional success with its elegant desk and law degrees prominently displayed. Yet here too were personal touches. More family photos, a child's clay handprint paperweight, a colorful paperclip holder clearly made in an art class. "I try to keep work and home separate," Olivia explained, "but the lines blur when you're a single parent. Sometimes this office is the only reason I can be home for dinner instead of at the firm until midnight." As they returned to the living room, Michael's attention was again drawn to the documents he had noticed earlier. This time, Olivia followed his gaze. "Work follows me everywhere," she said apologetically, gathering the papers into a neater stack. "Even on Friday nights." Michael hesitated, then decided directness was the only honest approach. "Is that the Westfield Developments project? The Riverside District acquisition?" Surprise registered on Olivia's face. "Yes, it is. How did you—" "My garage is in the Riverside District," Michael said quietly. "I received notice that my lease won't be renewed because Westfield is buying the entire block." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes, followed by something that looked like genuine regret. "Michael, I had no idea. The firm represents Westfield, but I didn't make the connection." She shook her head. "The world is smaller than we think, isn't it?" "Apparently so," Michael agreed, his tone more resigned than angry. "I suppose this makes tonight a bit awkward." Olivia set the papers down, turning to face him fully. "It doesn't have to. Business is business, but this," she gestured between them, "this is just two people who met by chance and whose daughters happen to like each other." "Is it that simple?" Michael asked, not entirely convinced. "No," Olivia admitted with surprising candor. "It's not simple at all, but I've learned that few worthwhile things in life are." Their conversation was interrupted by the girls returning to show off their completed artwork. A fantastical scene featuring a rainbow-colored classic car driving through a landscape that seemed to combine elements of city and countryside, with two small figures waving from the windows. "It's us," Madison explained proudly. "Me and Emily going on an adventure in a magic car that can go anywhere." "Even to the moon," Emily added seriously. "Madison said we need dreams that are big enough to scare us a little." Michael and Olivia exchanged glances, the tension of moments before softening in the face of their daughter's innocent collaboration. Whatever complications existed in the adult world, in that moment, it was hard to see them as insurmountable. As the evening drew to a close and it came time to leave, Madison impulsively hugged Emily goodbye, extracting a promise to come back soon. The girls had exchanged drawings, each proudly clutching the other's artwork. "Thank you for dinner," Michael said as they stood at the door. "It was unexpected in many ways, but I'm glad we came." "So am I," Olivia replied. She hesitated, then added, "About the Riverside project. I can't make any promises, but I'll look into it more closely. There might be aspects I'm not fully aware of." Michael nodded, appreciating her honesty even if it offered little concrete hope. "That's all anyone can ask. Good night, Olivia." In the elevator descending from the 32nd floor, Emily held her new drawing carefully, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Dad," she said finally, "I really like Madison, and I think her mom is nice too." "They are nice," Michael agreed, wondering how to explain the complications of adult life to a 7-year-old. "Madison said her mom is lonely sometimes, even though she has a big important mom and lots of money," Emily continued. "Just like you get lonely sometimes, even though you have me in the garage and can fix anything." Michael looked down at his perceptive daughter, once again taken aback by her insight. "Being a grown-up is complicated, Em." "I know," she said with the certainty of childhood. "But maybe you and Mrs. Bennet could help each other not be lonely, like me and Madison are going to be best friends." As they reached his truck in the parking garage, Michael lifted Emily into her booster seat, mulling over her simple suggestion. If only adult relationships could be forged with the straightforward honesty of children who saw connections where adults saw complications. The following Tuesday found Michael beneath a 1965 Jaguar E-Type, troubleshooting a persistent oil leak, when the familiar bell above the door jingled. Sliding out from under the car, he was surprised to see Alexander Bennett standing in his garage, looking as out of place in his tailored suit as a peacock in a chicken coop. "Mr. Reynolds," Alexander said, his tone pleasant, but with an edge of condescension, "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." Michael wiped his hands on a shop rag, taking his time before responding. "What can I do for you, Mr. Bennett?" Alexander raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised to be recognized. "You know who I am?" "Westfield Development CEO. Your name was on the notice about my lease." Michael gestured to a stool. "Would you like to sit down?" "No, thank you. This won't take long." Alexander glanced around the garage with the calculated assessment of someone valuing property rather than appreciating craftsmanship. "I understand you have met my sister, Olivia." So that was it. Michael felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. "I have. She was kind enough to invite my daughter and me to dinner after I helped her with car trouble." Alexander's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, our grandfather's Mercedes. She mentioned that. She's always been sentimental about that car." He paused, studying Michael. "I'll be direct, Mr. Reynolds. I'm here because I believe in fair dealings, boys. Your lease situation is unfortunate but inevitable. Progress requires change, and this neighborhood is overdue for revitalization." "Revitalization," Michael repeated, the corporate euphemism tasting bitter. "Is that what you call replacing family businesses with chain stores?" Alexander's expression hardened slightly. "I call it economic development, but I'm not here to debate urban planning with you. I'm here to make you an offer." He removed an envelope from his inside pocket. "Westfield is prepared to compensate you generously for the inconvenience of relocation. This check represents 6 months of your current rent, plus a finder's fee for a new location. All we ask in return is that you vacate within 30 days instead of 60. Michael didn't take the envelope. "And if I'm not interested in relocating?" "Everyone has a price, Mr. Reynolds," Alexander said smoothly. "If this offer isn't sufficient, perhaps we can negotiate. But I should be clear, this is a courtesy, not a requirement. Your lease is ending regardless." "My garage isn't just a business," Michael replied, keeping his voice even. "It's my daughter's future. It's my connection to my late wife. Some things don't have a price tag." Alexander's expression shifted to something like pity. "Noble sentiments, but impractical. Sentimentality doesn't pay bills or provide security." He set the envelope on a nearby workbench. "Think about it, Mr. Reynolds. Think about what's best for your daughter in the long run." As Alexander turned to leave, he paused, his back to Michael. "One more thing. My sister has always had a soft spot for underdogs. It's an admirable quality in a person, but a liability in an attorney. Whatever connection you think you might have formed with her, remember that she's a Bennett. She understands where her loyalties ultimately lie." With that parting shot, Alexander left, the bell jingling with jarring cheerfulness in his wake. Michael stared at the envelope for a long moment before picking it up. The amount written on the check inside was substantial, enough to cover Emily's medical bills and still have a cushion for starting over somewhere else. It was tempting in a way that made him uncomfortable, a clean solution to his most pressing problems. But as he looked around the garage, at the vintage cars in various stages of restoration, at the tools organized just the way he liked them, at Emily's small desk in the corner where she did homework after school, Michael knew he couldn't simply walk away. This place wasn't just where he worked. It was where he had rebuilt himself after losing Sarah, where Emily had learned to smile again, where they had forged a new life from the wreckage of their old one. Some things, as he had told Alexander, didn't have a price tag. The question was whether he could afford to stand by that principle when Emily's health and future hung in the balance. Michael's mind was racing as he drove Emily to school the next morning. The weight of Alexander Bennett's envelope sat heavily in his pocket, a solution and a surrender all at once. The practicality of accepting the offer warred with his instinct to fight for what he had built. "Dad, you're being quiet again," Emily observed, her small hands fidgeting with the straps of her backpack. "Is it about the garage?" Michael glanced at his daughter, continually amazed by her perceptiveness. "Yeah, Em, just thinking about some grown-up stuff." "Is it because of Madison's uncle? The one who wants to build new stores where our garage is?" He shouldn't have been surprised that she had pieced it together. Emily had always been observant, catching snippets of adult conversations and assembling them into remarkably accurate conclusions. Something like that, Michael admitted, pulling up to the school drop-off lane. But don't worry about it, okay? That's my job. Emily studied him with eyes that sometimes seemed decades older than her 7 years. Mom always said worries are lighter when you share them. Maybe you should talk to Madison's mom. She's a lawyer and she knows about fixing problems. The innocent suggestion hung between them as they reached the front of the drop-off line. Michael leaned over to kiss Emily's forehead. Have a good day, sweetheart. Mrs. Parker is picking you up for your doctor's appointment this afternoon, remember? I'll meet you there. Emily nodded, climbing out of the truck. Before closing the door, she turned back with a solemn expression. Dad, sometimes the things that need fixing aren't cars or garages. Sometimes they're the hard choices we have to make. That's what Mom would say. With that, she closed the door and joined the stream of children heading into the school, leaving Michael staring after her, once again humbled by the wisdom that occasionally emerged from his daughter's mouth, echoes of Sarah that both comforted and ached. As he pulled away from the school, Michael found himself taking a different route back to the garage, one that led past the gleaming high-rise where Olivia worked. He hadn't planned it, but as the building came into view, Emily's words echoed in his mind. Perhaps talking to Olivia wasn't such a bad idea after all. Not as a romantic prospect, which he firmly told himself wasn't on his radar, but as someone who might understand the legal complexities he was facing. Without giving himself time to reconsider, Michael parked in the visitors section of the building's garage and made his way to the lobby. The security guard at the desk eyed his work clothes with barely concealed skepticism. I'm here to see Olivia Bennett at Bennett and Carter, Michael said, suddenly aware of how out of place he must look in this temple of corporate success. Do you have an appointment, sir? The guard's tone suggested he already knew the answer. No, but Ms. Bennett is in meetings all morning. You're welcome to leave a message. The guard slid a visitor's log toward him, clearly expecting Michael to give up and leave. Instead, Michael wrote his name and Reynolds Restoration and Repair on the log, adding, Re Mercedes 220 SC Maintenance beside it. Could you please let her know I stopped by? It's about her grandfather's car. Something in his tone must have registered with the guard, who nodded reluctantly. I'll see that she gets the message, Mr. Reynolds. Michael thanked him and left, knowing the odds of his message making it through the layers of gatekeepers were slim. Still, he had made an effort, which was more than he had planned to do when he woke up that morning. Back at the garage, Michael threw himself into work, losing track of time as he meticulously rebuilt the carburetor for a 1958 Corvette. The familiar process of disassembly, cleaning, and reassembly had always been meditative for him, a way to quiet the noise in his head and focus on something he could control. The bell above the door jingled mid-afternoon, pulling him from his mechanical trance. Looking up, he was surprised to see Olivia standing in the entrance, her business attire a stark contrast to the working garage around her. I got your message, she said by way of greeting. The Mercedes is running perfectly, so I'm guessing that wasn't really why you came by. Michael set down his tools and wiped his hands. No, it wasn't, he admitted, though I am glad to hear it's running well. Olivia nodded, glancing around the garage with genuine interest. Unlike her brother, who had assessed the space as a property to be acquired, she seemed to be appreciating it for what it was, a place of craft and care. Your brother paid me a visit yesterday, Michael said, deciding directness was the best approach. He made a generous offer for me to vacate early. I see. Olivia's expression remained neutral, but a slight tightening around her eyes suggested this wasn't news she welcomed. And you wanted to talk to me about it? Actually, I'm not sure why I came by, Michael admitted. It was an impulse. Emily suggested I talk to you. She thinks because you're a lawyer, you might understand the situation better than I do. A small smile touched Olivia's lips. Emily gives me too much credit. Corporate law is a bit different from property disputes. She hesitated, then asked, May I sit down? Michael gestured to the small customer waiting area, which consisted of a worn leather sofa and a coffee table perpetually covered in automotive magazines. As they sat, the vast difference in their worlds was thrown into sharp relief. Olivia, in her tailored suit, perched somewhat uncomfortably on his oil-stained sofa. I should be up front, she said after a moment. I can't discuss the details of Westfield's project with you. Attorney-client privilege. I understand, Michael replied, though disappointment settled in his chest. That said, Olivia continued, surprising him, I'm not directly involved in the Riverside acquisition. It's Alexander's pet project, and I've been focused on other cases. What I do know is that my brother can be single-minded when it comes to business. That's one way to put it, Michael said dryly. Olivia's expression softened. I'm sorry about your garage, Michael. Truly. Places like this, she gestured around them, they have value beyond the bottom line. My grandfather understood that. He always said that craftsmanship was becoming a lost art in a world obsessed with the newest, shiniest things. Your grandfather sounds like my kind of person, Michael commented. It's ironic that his legacy is now being used to eliminate places like this. The observation hung between them, a truth neither could deny. Olivia looked troubled, and Michael regretted the bluntness of his words. I'm sorry, he said. That wasn't fair. You're not responsible for your brother's business decisions. Maybe not directly, she conceded, but I am part of the firm that's facilitating them. That makes me complicit, whether I like it or not. She straightened her shoulders, a professional mask slipping back into place. I should get back to the office. I have a deposition in an hour. As she stood to leave, Michael found himself reluctant to end the conversation. Would you and Madison like to come by the garage sometime? He asked impulsively. Emily would love to see her again, and I could show Madison some basics about how cars work. She seemed interested when we talked about it at dinner. The invitation seemed to catch Olivia off guard, but a genuine smile spread across her face. Madison would love that. She hasn't stopped talking about Emily since Friday. How about this weekend? Saturday afternoon? Saturday works, Michael agreed, surprised at how pleased he felt about the prospect. Around 2? We'll be here. Olivia hesitated at the door, then turned back. Michael, I know this situation with the garage is difficult. For what it's worth, I think what you've built here is special. Not many people have the courage to follow their passion the way you have. Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her perfume, something subtle and elegant that seemed out of place in the garage, yet somehow made perfect sense. Have you ever found yourself caught between different worlds, whether it's social classes, career paths, or just different ways of seeing the world? These boundaries can seem impossible to cross. Yet sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when we step outside our comfort zones and build bridges across these divides. What unexpected connections have changed your perspective? Share your experience in the comments below. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that seemed designed for new beginnings. Michael spent the morning tidying the garage, clearing space for their visitors, and setting up a simple demonstration area where Madison could safely learn about automotive basics. Emily was unusually excited, changing her outfit twice before settling on jeans and her favorite t-shirt with a vintage car print that Michael had given her for her last birthday. She had even created a special welcome sign for Madison, decorated with colorful drawings of cars and hearts. Do you think Madison will like learning about cars? Emily asked as she arranged a collection of safe parts for the demonstration. Spark plugs, air filters, and a small tire that had been cleaned thoroughly. I'm sure she will, Michael replied, touched by his daughter's enthusiasm. You're a good teacher, Em. Just like you, Dad, she said with a smile that momentarily transformed her face into a mirror image of Sarah's. The thought of his late wife brought a bittersweet pang. Sarah would have loved seeing Emily like this, animated, planning, connecting with a new friend. It was these moments when her absence felt most acute, these milestones she should have been part of. At precisely 2 o'clock, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside the garage. Madison burst out before Olivia had fully parked, racing toward Emily with the unfiltered excitement only children can express so openly. We're here. I brought my drawing pad so we can make car designs, Madison called, waving a professional-looking art portfolio that was almost as big as she was. Emily's face lit up as she ran to meet her friend, all shyness forgotten. The girls immediately fell into animated conversation, Madison admiring the welcome sign, while Emily explained the day's planned activities. Olivia emerged from the SUV more sedately, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blue blouse, a marked departure from her business attire. Michael was struck by how different she looked, more relaxed and somehow more authentic. This is quite the welcome, Olivia commented, nodding toward the sign. Emily must have put a lot of work into it. She's been planning this all week, Michael admitted. It's good to see her so excited about something. The past few years haven't given her many reasons to be. Olivia's expression softened with understanding. Madison, too. Since the divorce, she's had to grow up too fast. It's nice to see her just being a kid again. The afternoon unfolded with an easy rhythm that surprised them all. Michael guided the girls through basic automotive concepts, showing Madison how to check oil levels and explaining how the different systems in a car work together, while Emily proudly demonstrated her knowledge as his assistant. Madison proved to be an attentive student, asking thoughtful questions that showed genuine interest. "So the engine is like the heart of the car?" she asked at one point, making a connection that delighted Michael. "Exactly right," he confirmed. "And like a heart, it needs proper care and maintenance to keep everything running smoothly." "Just like people," Madison observed with childish wisdom. "My grandpa always said you have to take care of what matters, or it falls apart." The innocent comment hung in the air for a moment, resonating with a truth that transcended automobiles. Michael and Olivia exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement passing between them of the wisdom that sometimes emerged from children's mouths. While the girls were occupied with drawing their dream cars on a clean section of the garage floor, Olivia wandered over to a vintage Aston Martin that sat partially restored in the corner. "This is beautiful," she commented, running her hand lightly over the curve of the fender. "I didn't realize restoration work was so detailed." "Most people don't," Michael replied, joining her. "They see the finished product and think it's just about making an old car look pretty again. But it's really about preserving history, understanding how these machines were built, the craftsmanship that went into them, and keeping that alive." "Like what my grandfather did with his Mercedes," Olivia mused. "Exactly. Cars like these weren't just transportation. They were works of art, built by people who took pride in their craft. Mass production has its place, but something gets lost when everything becomes disposable." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "My grandfather used to say the same thing about the law. He built his practice on relationships and trust, knowing his clients as people, not just billable hours. The firm has grown so much since then, sometimes I wonder if we've lost sight of his original vision." The parallel wasn't lost on Michael, but before he could respond, his phone rang. The screen showed the hospital's number, sending a jolt of concern through him. "Excuse me, I need to take this," he said, stepping away. The brief conversation left him with a furrowed brow and tight shoulders as he returned to Olivia. "Everything okay?" she asked, clearly noting his change in demeanor. "That was Emily's cardiologist," Michael explained quietly, ensuring the girls couldn't overhear. "They've had a cancellation and can move up her surgery to next month, but they need a larger deposit than I was expecting. I'll figure it out, but—" He trailed off, the reality of his financial situation weighing heavily. Olivia's expression shifted to one of concern. "I didn't realize Emily needed surgery. Is it serious?" Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Congenital heart defect. She's been managing with medication, but the doctors say she needs the procedure before she turns 8. The timing with everything else is just—" He gestured vaguely, encompassing the garage, the Westfield situation, and all the complications entangled with them. "I'm so sorry, Michael," Olivia said, genuine empathy in her voice. "If there's anything I can do—" "Thanks, but we'll manage," he interrupted, uncomfortable with accepting sympathy. "We always do." Their conversation was cut short by excited calls from the girls, who wanted to show off their collaborative design, a futuristic car that somehow combined elements of a classic Mustang with what appeared to be rocket boosters and butterfly doors. "It runs on imagination," Madison explained proudly, "and it has special seats that can fly out and turn into beds if you get tired." "Very practical," Michael commented with a straight face, which sent both girls into fits of giggles. The afternoon passed quickly, and as the time came for Olivia and Madison to leave, there was a reluctance on all sides to end the day. The girls extracted promises from each other to meet again soon, while Michael and Olivia exchanged awkward but sincere thanks for the afternoon. As Olivia buckled Madison into the SUV, Michael noticed a sleek black sedan parking across the street. The driver's window lowered slightly, revealing Alexander Bennett's distinctive profile. The older Bennett sibling watched the scene for a long moment before driving away without acknowledging them. Michael chose not to mention the sighting to Olivia, not wanting to cast a shadow over what had been a pleasant day. But as he watched her drive away, he couldn't shake the feeling that their worlds were colliding in ways that would eventually force difficult choices for them both. The following Wednesday brought rain, a steady, penetrating drizzle that seemed to mirror Michael's darkening mood. The hospital had called again, confirming Emily's surgery date and gently but firmly reminding him about the required deposit. Alexander's envelope sat in his desk drawer, the solution it offered growing more tempting with each passing day. Michael was so absorbed in his thoughts that he nearly missed the tall figure entering the garage, rain dripping from an expensive overcoat. "Mr. Reynolds," Victor Crane's voice cut through the garage's ambient noise like a blade. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Michael straightened, immediately on guard. Victor Crane's reputation preceded him, a ruthless investor known for acquiring properties at rock-bottom prices from desperate sellers, then flipping them for massive profits. That he was Alexander Bennett's partner in the Riverside development was telling. "Mr. Crane," Michael acknowledged, wiping his hands. "What can I do for you?" Crane surveyed the garage with calculating eyes. Unlike Alexander's condescension or Olivia's appreciation, Crane's gaze held only cold assessment, the look of a predator evaluating prey. "I'll be direct, Reynolds. Alexander tells me you're hesitant about our relocation offer. I'm here to sweeten the deal." He removed an envelope from his coat, thicker than Alexander's had been. "Double the original offer with an additional allowance for medical expenses. Alexander mentioned your daughter's condition." The casual reference to Emily's health sent a chill through Michael that had nothing to do with the damp weather. "My daughter's medical situation is private," he said stiffly. Crane shrugged, unperturbed. "Business is about information, Reynolds. The more you know, the better position you are to make an offer that can't be refused." He placed the envelope on the workbench. "I understand your attachment to this place, but sentimentality is a luxury few can afford when a child's health is at stake." The calculated nature of the offer, timed precisely when Michael's financial concerns for Emily were most pressing, felt manipulative and invasive. Yet the amount would solve his most immediate problems, including Emily's surgery and a cushion for starting over elsewhere. "Why the urgency?" Michael asked, not touching the envelope. "The development can't break ground until all properties are vacated, and my lease still has weeks to run." Something flickered in Crane's expression. Annoyance, perhaps, or surprise that Michael understood the leverage he still held. "Let's just say there are investors with timelines that don't accommodate delays. Consider this motivation to make the right decision quickly." "And if I don't?" Crane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm a businessman, Reynolds. I always have contingency plans." He gestured around the garage. "Fire codes are tricky things in old buildings like this. Health department inspections can be rigorous. Licensing requirements change. The cost of fighting these battles can add up quickly, money that might be better spent on more important priorities." The implied threat hung in the air between them. Michael's hands clenched involuntarily at his sides, anger burning through his veins. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Crane?" "Not at all," Crane replied smoothly. "Just outlining business realities. Think of it as a friendly warning from someone who's seen how these situations typically play out." He checked his watch, a timepiece that probably cost more than Michael's annual rent. "I'll give you until Friday to consider the offer. After that, it expires and we move to alternative approaches." With that, he left, the bell above the door jingling discordantly in his wake. Michael stared at the envelope, the temptation it represented now tainted by the manner of its offering. Taking it felt like surrendering not just his garage, but something more fundamental: his dignity, his principles, the example he wanted to set for Emily. Yet refusing it meant continuing to face mounting medical bills with dwindling resources, all while fighting to save a garage that might be lost regardless. For the first time since Sarah's death, Michael felt truly cornered, with no clear path forward that didn't require sacrificing something essential. The ringing of his phone provided a welcome distraction. Expecting the hospital again, he was surprised to see Olivia's name on the screen. "Michael, I hope I'm not interrupting." Her voice came through, professional but with an undercurrent of urgency. "Not at all," he replied, trying to shake off the lingering unease from Crane's visit. "What can I do for you?" "I need to talk to you about the Riverside development. Not over the phone, Are you free for coffee? There's a place called Molly's about a block from your garage. The request surprised him. I can be there in 20 minutes. Is everything okay? I'm not sure, Olivia answered cryptically, but I think you should hear what I've found. 30 minutes later, Michael sat across from Olivia in a corner booth at Molly's, a cozy cafe that had somehow survived the neighborhood's gradual transition. Rain streaked the windows, creating a cocoon of privacy around their conversation. Olivia looked different, not just because she was in casual clothes, having apparently left work early, but because of the tension evident in her posture. She had a leather portfolio open before her, filled with documents she'd been reluctantly showing him. I shouldn't be doing this, she said, voice low despite the cafe's ambient noise. Attorney-client privilege and all that. But after what I found, I couldn't just sit on it. What she'd found was troubling. Evidence suggesting that Westfield had been using questionable tactics to acquire properties in the Riverside district, pressure on elderly owners, misleading information about property values, and in some cases what appeared to be deliberate building code violations filed against holdout businesses. When you mentioned Victor Crane was involved, I started digging, Olivia explained. He has a history of these tactics, nothing that's crossed the line into outright illegality, but definitely in ethical gray areas. And your brother? Michael asked quietly. Olivia's expression tightened. Alexander's always been ambitious, but this, she gestured at the documents, this isn't how our grandfather built the firm. This isn't who we're supposed to be. The vulnerability in her admission struck Michael. This wasn't just about his garage anymore. It was about Olivia confronting uncomfortable truths about her family and her own role in their business practices. What does this mean for the development? He asked. Legally? Not much, unfortunately. These tactics are unethical but carefully crafted to avoid crossing lines that would lead to serious consequences. She hesitated, then added, but I've scheduled a meeting with Alexander tomorrow. I'm going to confront him about what I've found. Michael felt a surge of concern. Is that wise? From what I've seen of your brother, he doesn't take opposition well. Probably not, Olivia admitted with a wry smile, but it's necessary. The Bennett name means something in this city. It stands for integrity, or at least it used to. I can't just look the other way. Her determination impressed him, even as he worried about the position she was putting herself in. What can I do to help? Just keep doing what you're doing, she replied. Don't accept Crane's offer, no matter how tempting it might be. Give me time to work on Alexander, and he's not a bad person, just misguided in his priorities. Michael wasn't as confident in Alexander's redemption potential, but he appreciated Olivia's loyalty to her family despite her concerns. It spoke to a strength of character that he found increasingly admirable. As they prepared to leave, Michael hesitated, then decided to share his own news. Emily's surgery has been moved up to next month, he said. It's good that she'll get it sooner, but the timing with everything else is challenging. Olivia's expression softened with genuine concern. Michael, I had no idea things were so urgent. Is there anything I can do? I know lawyers aren't exactly known for their generosity, but... No, he interrupted gently. I appreciate the thought, but we'll manage. Rentals take care of their own. That's what I've always taught Emily. Being strong doesn't mean you have to face everything alone, Olivia said quietly. That's something I'm still learning myself. Their eyes met across the table, a moment of connection that transcended the differences in their backgrounds and circumstances. In Olivia's gaze, Michael saw not pity but understanding, the recognition of a fellow parent doing their best in difficult circumstances. The moment was broken by the chiming of Olivia's phone. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Alexander. I should take this. Michael nodded, giving her privacy by stepping away to pay their bill. When he returned, Olivia's expression had hardened into something he hadn't seen before, a cold anger that transformed her features. What's wrong? He asked as they stepped outside, the rain having lessened to a light drizzle. My brother, she replied, her voice tight. He's called an emergency partners meeting at the firm. Apparently, someone has been accessing files without authorization and needs to be addressed appropriately. The implication was clear. Alexander knew about Olivia's investigation. Will you be okay? Michael asked, genuine concern in his voice. I'll be fine, she assured him, though her expression suggested otherwise. Alexander may be the firm's rainmaker, but I have allies too. This isn't over yet, not by a long shot. As they parted ways, Michael watched Olivia stride purposefully toward her car, shoulders squared against whatever confrontation awaited her. He was struck by the courage it took to stand up against her own family for what she believed was right, a courage that only increased his respect for her. The following days passed in a tense limbo. Michael heard nothing from Olivia, though he'd sent a text checking in after their meeting. The silence worried him, especially as Friday, Crane's deadline, approached with no word. Emily noticed his distraction during dinner Thursday night, picking at her food with unusual quietness. "Dad, are we going to have to move?" she asked suddenly, looking up at him with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see right through his attempts to shield her from adult concerns. Michael set down his fork, considering how to answer. He had always been honest with Emily, believing that children deserved the truth, even when it was difficult. But he also wanted to protect her from unnecessary worry. "I don't know yet, Em," he admitted finally. "There are some people who want to buy the property where our garage is. If that happens, we might need to find a new location." Emily processed this with a thoughtfulness beyond her years. "Is that why you're sad? Because you might lose the garage?" "Partly," Michael acknowledged, "but mostly I'm worried about making the right decisions for us, for our future." "Because of my heart surgery," Emily said matter-of-factly. It wasn't a question. Michael nodded, his throat tight. "The garage is important, but you're what matters most, Em. Always." Emily considered this, pushing a carrot around her plate. "Madison said her uncle is the one who wants to build new stores where our garage is. She said her mom is really mad at him about it." The statement caught Michael by surprise. "Madison told you that?" Emily nodded. "Yesterday, when we were talking on the phone. She said her mom and uncle had a big fight, and now her mom is working from home because she doesn't want to see him." This was the first Michael had heard about the outcome of Olivia's confrontation with Alexander. The news that she was working from home, effectively isolating herself from the firm, suggested things hadn't gone well. "Did Madison say anything else?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "Just that her mom was making a lot of phone calls and looking at old papers from their grandpa." Emily shrugged. "Madison thought it was boring grown-up stuff. The information filtered through the perspective of a 7-year-old wasn't much to go on, but it suggested Olivia was still fighting in her own way." After putting Emily to bed, Michael tried calling Olivia again, but the call went straight to voicemail. Concern gnawed at him as he considered what might be happening. Had Alexander taken action against his sister professionally? Was she in some kind of trouble because she had tried to help him? The next morning, Crane's deadline dawned bright and clear, the sunshine a stark contrast to Michael's troubled mood. He opened the garage early, hoping to lose himself in work while waiting for whatever the day might bring. Just before noon, the bell above the door announced a visitor. Michael looked up, expecting to see Crane with his predatory smile and final ultimatum. Instead, he was surprised to find Olivia standing there, looking tired but determined. "I'm sorry I've been out of touch," she said without preamble. "Things have been complicated." "Emily mentioned you and Alexander had a disagreement," Michael replied, setting down his tools and wiping his hands. "Are you okay?" Olivia's smile was weary but genuine. "I've been better, but I'm not here about that, at least not directly. I need to show you something." She opened her portfolio on a clean section of workbench, revealing a collection of yellowed documents and old photographs. "These belong to my grandfather. I found them in storage at the firm when I was looking for leverage against Alexander." Michael leaned in, his attention caught by a familiar image, a photograph of a gas station from the 1960s with a distinctive sign that matched the one in the document he'd found in his garage drawer. "This was Route 66 Auto Service," Olivia explained, pointing to the photo. "My grandfather's first business before he became a lawyer. He opened it after returning from Korea, ran it for about 5 years before going to law school." Michael stared at the photo, recognition dawning. "This is my garage," he said slowly, "before it was renovated. Look at the window configuration, the roof line. It's the same building." Olivia nodded, excitement in her eyes. "Exactly. And there's more." She pulled out another document, a deed of sale dated 1965. "Thomas Bennett sold the garage to William Reynolds. Any relation?" "My grandfather," Michael breathed, stunned by the connection. "He ran it until the early 90s when my father took over. I never knew he bought it from your grandfather." The revelation hung between them, a thread connecting their families across decades. a shared history neither had known existed. But beyond the personal significance, Michael saw something else in the documents. This could help establish the garage as a historic property, he said, his mind racing with possibilities. Route 66 has protected status in many places. If we can prove this was one of the original service stations, it might be enough to block the development, Olivia finished, understanding immediately, or at least force a major redesign that preserves the original structure. The hope that flared in Michael's chest was tempered by practical concerns. But would it be enough, and could we establish the historical significance before Crane's bulldozers arrive? That's where I come in, Olivia replied with newfound confidence. I've already contacted the State Historical Society and the Route 66 Association. They're sending representatives next week to evaluate the property. If they support the designation, we can file for emergency protected status. The "we" in her statement wasn't lost on Michael. Somewhere along the way, Olivia had fully committed herself to his cause, despite the professional and personal risks involved. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. You're putting yourself at odds with your brother, maybe even risking your position at the firm. Why take that chance for a garage you barely know? Olivia was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Partly because it's the right thing to do, she said finally, but also because in the past few weeks, I've seen something here that's becoming rare. Someone who believes in building things to last, in taking care of what matters, in standing up for principles even when it's difficult. The world needs more of that, not less. Her words touched something deep in Michael, a recognition that went beyond gratitude. Before he could respond, however, the moment was shattered by the sound of screeching tires outside. Looking through the window, they saw Alexander Bennett emerging from his luxury sedan, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him, Victor Crane exited a second vehicle, his expression equally ominous. It seems my brother has figured out where I've been, Olivia said, her voice tight. This should be interesting. Alexander burst into the garage without knocking, his normally composed demeanor visibly fractured. Olivia, what the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded, ignoring Michael completely. First you access confidential files, then you contact our clients behind my back. And now this? Historical designation? Have you lost your mind? Olivia faced her brother calmly, though Michael could see tension in the set of her shoulders. I'm doing what grandfather would have done, Alex, protecting something of value instead of destroying it for profit. Don't bring Thomas into this, Alexander snapped. He built a successful business through smart decisions, not sentimental nonsense. Is that what you call intimidating elderly shop owners and filing false code violations? Olivia challenged. Smart business? Victor Crane stepped forward, his cold eyes fixed on Michael. Your deadline has passed, Reynolds. The offer is withdrawn. We'll proceed with alternative methods to secure the property. Threatening me again, Crane? Michael asked, anger rising. It didn't work the first time. Alexander looked between them, confusion momentarily replacing anger. What threats? Victor, what is he talking about? An uncomfortable silence fell as Crane avoided Alexander's questioning gaze. It was clear that some of Crane's tactics had been employed without his partner's knowledge, a revelation that seemed to give Alexander pause. It doesn't matter, Crane dismissed. What matters is that this garage will be vacated by the end of the month, one way or another. The project is moving forward. Not if it's designated a historic property, Olivia countered, retrieving the documents from the workbench. The garage qualifies under 3 separate criteria for Route 66 historic preservation. Once that designation is granted, any development will have to incorporate and preserve the original structure. You can't be serious, Alexander scoffed, though uncertainty had crept into his expression. This isn't some architectural treasure. It's a rundown auto shop. It's one of the last original Route 66 service stations in the city, Olivia pressed. And it happens to be the first business that our grandfather ever owned, the place where he built the foundation for everything the Bennett name stands for today. This revelation clearly caught Alexander off guard. What are you talking about? Olivia handed him the old photograph of Thomas Bennett standing proudly in front of the garage, decades before it would become Reynolds Restoration and Repair. Grandfather sold it to Michael's grandfather in 1965 when he went to law school. It's been in continuous operation as an auto service center for over 60 years. Alexander stared at the photograph, something shifting in his expression. For the first time, he seemed to be seeing the garage not as a property to be acquired, but as a piece of his own family's history. Crane, however, was unmoved. Touching story, but irrelevant. Sentiment doesn't trump contracts, and we have investors waiting. Bennett, we need to shut this down now. Alexander looked torn, his gaze moving from the photograph to his sister, then to Michael. In that moment of hesitation, the bell above the door jingled again as a small figure burst into the garage. "Takan!" Emily called, her face alight with excitement as she ran to Michael, backpack bouncing. "Mrs. Parker picked me up early because the nurse at school said I—" She stopped abruptly, noticing the tension and the strangers in the garage. "Oh, hello." The unexpected arrival of a child shifted the atmosphere instantly. Emily's presence, her innocence and vulnerability, seemed to diffuse some of the hostility that had filled the space moments before. "Hello there," Olivia said warmly, kneeling to Emily's level. "You must be Emily. I'm Olivia, Madison's mom. We've heard so much about you." Emily's face brightened at the mention of her friend. "You're Madison's mom? She told me you were pretty. She was right." The simple compliment brought a genuine smile to Olivia's face, a brief moment of warmth amid the conflict. Alexander, uncomfortable with the interruption, cleared his throat. "We should continue this discussion elsewhere." "No," Michael said firmly, placing a protective hand on Emily's shoulder. "This garage is my business and my home. Whatever needs to be said can be said here." Emily looked up at her father, confusion in her eyes. "Dad, is something wrong?" Before Michael could answer, Emily's attention was caught by the photograph still in Alexander's hands. "Hey, that's our garage, but it looks really old." Alexander glanced down at the child, then back at the photograph. Something in Emily's innocent observation seemed to reach him in a way the adults' arguments hadn't. "Yes, it is old," he said, his tone softer than it had been moments before. "It belonged to my grandfather a long time ago." Emily's eyes widened. "Really? That means your grandpa and my grandpa both own in the same garage. That's like garage cousins or something." The childish logic brought an unexpected chuckle from Alexander, surprising everyone, including himself. For a brief moment, the hardened businessman gave way to something more human. Victor Crane, however, had reached the limit of his patience. "Enough of this. Bennett, we need to make decisions based on business, not family photos and children's observations." The harsh words drew everyone's attention back to Crane, whose cold demeanor seemed particularly jarring in contrast to the moment of connection that had just occurred. Alexander straightened, his expression hardening again as he handed the photograph back to Olivia. "Victor's right. Business is business. The development is moving forward." Michael felt Emily's small hand slip into his, seeking reassurance. He squeezed it gently, trying to convey a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Then we'll see you at the historical designation hearing," Olivia said, gathering her documents with deliberate care. "I've already filed the emergency petition. The review board meets next week." Alexander's jaw tightened at this news. "You're making a mistake, Olivia. This puts you in direct opposition to the firm's interests." "No," she countered calmly. "It puts me in alignment with the firm's founding principles. There's a difference." The siblings stared at each other, years of shared history and competing values hanging in the balance between them. Finally, Alexander turned to leave, gesturing for Crane to follow. At the door, he paused, looking back at Michael. "For what it's worth, Reynolds, your work here is impressive. In another situation, I might have appreciated it." With that small acknowledgement, he left, Crane following with a final warning glare that promised this wasn't over. As the door closed behind them, Emily looked up at her father with worried eyes. "Are they going to take away our garage, Dad?" Michael knelt to her level, aware of Olivia watching them with compassion. "I don't know, Em, but what I do know is that we're going to fight for it, just like we fight for all the important things in our lives. And this time, we have some pretty impressive help." He glanced up at Olivia, who smiled with a determination that kindled something in his chest, a feeling that had been dormant for too long. Not just hope for saving the garage, but something more personal and fragile. The possibility of connection, of not facing life's battles alone. "Ms. Bennett?" Emily asked, turning to Olivia with the directness only children can manage. "Are you and my dad friends now?" Olivia knelt beside them, meeting Emily's gaze. Yes, I think we are. Good friends who help each other when things get tough. Emily nodded, satisfied with this answer. Good. My mom always said everyone needs at least one person who will stand with them when things get stormy. She looked between the adults with solemn eyes. I think she would be happy that Dad has you now. The simple statement, delivered with a child's unfiltered honesty, brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. She reached out instinctively, touching Emily's cheek with gentle fingers. Your mom sounds like a very wise woman, she said softly. And I think she'd be incredibly proud of both you and your dad for fighting for what matters. In that moment, as autumn sunlight streamed through the garage windows, illuminating the three of them in its golden glow, Michael felt something shift, as if the universe had realigned slightly, opening a door to possibilities he had long since stopped considering. The battle for the garage was far from over, and Emily's surgery still loomed on the horizon. But for the first time in years, the weight of those challenges felt bearable, shared now with someone who understood what it meant to fight for something worth preserving. The week leading up to the historical designation hearing passed in a blur of activity. Michael spent every spare moment between restoration jobs documenting the garage's history, gathering photographs, and preparing his testimony. Olivia threw herself into the legal aspects, researching precedents and building a compelling case for preservation. Through it all, the children remained blissfully focused on their growing friendship, seemingly unaffected by the tension swirling around the adults. Emily and Madison had taken to having daily video calls, their faces pressed close to phone screens as they shared drawings and stories, building their own world apart from the conflict. On Tuesday morning, 3 days before the hearing, Michael arrived at the garage to find a small group of people waiting outside. An older gentleman with a carefully trimmed white beard stepped forward as Michael approached. Mr. Reynolds, I'm Dr. Howard Kaplan from the State Historical Society. These are my colleagues from the Route 66 Association and the City Preservation Board. Ms. Bennett arranged for us to evaluate the property today. Michael welcomed them, feeling oddly nervous as they entered the garage. These strangers would play a crucial role in determining his future, yet they seemed more interested in the building itself than in his personal stake in the outcome. Dr. Kaplan moved through the space with reverent attention, examining original fixtures and structural elements that Michael had never given much thought to. The preservation experts documented everything, from the distinctive curved trusses supporting the roof to the worn concrete floor with its decades of oil stains, each mark representing a vehicle that had passed through these doors. The integrity of the original structure is remarkable, Dr. Kaplan commented, running his hand along a beam. Most of these service stations were demolished or altered beyond recognition decades ago. To find one still functioning in its original capacity is quite extraordinary. Michael felt a surge of pride at the words. He had always valued the garage for what it allowed him to do, restore beautiful machines and provide for his family. But seeing it through these experts' eyes gave him a new appreciation for the building itself as a piece of living history. Ms. Bennett provided us with the original deed and some fascinating historical photographs, one of the Route 66 representatives noted. But do you have any additional documentation? Service records, business licenses, anything that establishes the continuous operation timeline? Michael thought for a moment, then remembered the old filing cabinet in the back office, the one he'd been meaning to clean out for years but never found the time. I might. Give me a few minutes. The cabinet yielded a treasure trove of historical documents. His grandfather's original business license from 1965, service records dating back decades, even a framed newspaper article from 1969 featuring William Reynolds standing proudly beside a recently restored Cadillac, with the distinctive Route 66 shield visible on the garage wall behind him. As the experts pored over these findings, Michael's phone rang. It was Dr. Harriman, Emily's cardiologist. Mr. Reynolds, I'm calling about Emily's pre-surgical appointment tomorrow. We've had a development I'd like to discuss in person. Could you come in this afternoon? The serious tone sent a chill through Michael. Is something wrong? Has her condition worsened? No, nothing like that, Dr. Harriman assured him. It's about a treatment option. I'd rather not get into details over the phone. After scheduling the appointment, Michael returned to find the historical evaluation team wrapping up their visit. Mr. Reynolds, based on our preliminary assessment, this property has significant historical merit, Dr. Kaplan informed him. The connection to Route 66, the continuous operation as an auto service center, and the remarkable preservation of the original structure all support designation. We'll provide our formal recommendation to the review board, but I'm optimistic about your chances. The words should have brought relief, but Michael's mind had already shifted to the more immediate concern of Emily's health. He thanked the team and saw them out, then called Olivia to update her on both developments. "That's wonderful news about the evaluation," she said, her voice warm with genuine pleasure. "But I'm concerned about this appointment. Would you like me to come with you? Sometimes it helps to have another person listening when doctors share complex information." The offer caught Michael off guard. It was the kind of thing Sarah would have done, showing up without question when support was needed. In the years since her death, he had grown accustomed to facing such moments alone. "You don't have to do that," he replied automatically. "I'm sure you're busy with case preparations." "Michael," Olivia's voice softened, "I wouldn't have offered if I didn't want to be there. Besides, two heads are better than one when processing medical information." Something in her tone, not pity, but genuine care, made him reconsider. "Actually, that would be really helpful. The appointment's at 3 at Mercy Children's Hospital." "I'll meet you in the lobby at 2:45, Olivia promised. True to her word, Olivia was waiting in the hospital lobby when Michael arrived. She had brought coffee for both of them, a small gesture that touched him more than he expected. They had barely settled into the waiting room when Dr. Harriman called them in. The cardiologist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner, looked momentarily surprised to see Michael with company, but recovered quickly, greeting them both warmly. "Mr. Reynolds, I asked you to come in because there's been an interesting development regarding Emily's case," she began, pulling up images on her computer screen. "As you know, we've been planning a standard procedure to repair her septal defect. However, I recently presented her case at a conference, and a colleague suggested she might be a candidate for a new, less invasive technique." Hope flickered in Michael's chest. "Less invasive? What does that mean exactly?" Dr. Harriman explained the technical details. "A catheter-based approach that wouldn't require opening Emily's chest, significantly reducing recovery time and complications." As she spoke, Michael felt Olivia's hand lightly touch his arm, a silent gesture of support that helped ground him amid the medical terminology. "The downside," Dr. Harriman continued, "is that it's still considered experimental for patients Emily's age. While it's been successful in older children and adults, there's limited data for 7-year-olds with her specific defect type." "What about insurance coverage?" Michael asked, the practical concern never far from his mind. The doctor's expression confirmed his fears. "That's the other challenge, because it's considered investigational for her age group. Your insurance is unlikely to cover it. The standard procedure would be covered at 80, as we discussed previously." "And the cost difference?" Olivia asked, her question practical and focused. "Substantial," Dr. Harriman admitted. "The new procedure would cost approximately $30,000 out of pocket versus about $8,000 for your portion of the standard surgery." The figures hung in the air between them. Despite the medical advantages, the financial reality put the new procedure firmly out of reach. Alexander's offer, now withdrawn, flashed through Michael's mind, a painful reminder of the choices he faced. "I know this is a lot to consider," Dr. Harriman said gently. "The standard procedure is still an excellent option with a very high success rate. Emily is young and otherwise healthy, which are significant advantages. Take some time to think about it, but we'll need a decision by Friday to maintain our surgical schedule." Friday, the same day as the historical designation hearing. The universe seemed determined to force all his critical decisions to converge at once. In the hospital hallway afterward, Olivia turned to Michael. "What are you thinking?" "That $30,000 might as well be $1 million, he said quietly. "The standard surgery is proven, and Emily's strong. It's the practical choice." Olivia nodded, understanding in her eyes. "But if money weren't an issue?" "The less invasive option, without question," Michael admitted. "Faster recovery, lower risk of complications. No major scar tissue as she grows." He trailed off, the impossible choice weighing heavily. They walked in silence to the parking lot, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. As they reached Olivia's car, she turned to him with sudden resolve. Michael, I want to help with Emily's medical expenses. He stiffened immediately. Olivia, I appreciate everything you're doing with the historical designation, but I can't accept money from you. Why not? She challenged, her gaze direct and unwavering. If our situations were reversed, if Madison needed something I couldn't provide but you could, wouldn't you want to help? The question disarmed him. Of course he would help, without hesitation. But accepting help himself, especially financial help, felt like failing at the one job that mattered most, providing for his daughter. It's not about pride, he said finally, or not entirely. It's about teaching Emily that we stand on our own, that we don't give up what matters to us because things get difficult. And isn't accepting help when you need it also an important lesson? Olivia countered gently, showing her that strength sometimes means recognizing when you can't do everything alone. The echo of his late wife's words and Olivia's sentiment wasn't lost on Michael. Sarah had often told him his self-reliance, while admirable, could sometimes be his greatest weakness. Let me think about it, he said finally. No promises, but I'll think about it. Olivia nodded, accepting his response without pushing further. That's all I ask, and Michael, whatever you decide about the surgery, we're still going to save that garage. I promise you that. The certainty in her voice, the we that now seemed so natural between them, gave Michael a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. A feeling that perhaps he wasn't facing these battles entirely alone after all. We all reach turning points in life, moments when we must decide between the path of pride and the path of connection. Have you ever struggled to accept help when you needed it most? Or perhaps you've been the one offering support to someone who found it difficult to receive? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in knowing when to let others in. Friday morning arrived clear and crisp, a perfect autumn day that belied the tension Michael felt as he prepared for the historical designation hearing. Emily sat at the kitchen table, carefully coloring a good luck card for the garage, her brow furrowed in concentration. Do you think the garage is scared about today, Dad? She asked without looking up from her drawing. Michael paused in the midst of organizing his documents. Scared? Why would the garage be scared? Because important people are deciding its future, Emily explained, as if it were obvious. Like how I feel before doctor appointments when they decide what to do about my heart. The comparison struck Michael, offering a new perspective on the building he'd fought so hard to save. To Emily, the garage wasn't just a structure or a business. It was almost a living entity with its own hopes and fears. I think if the garage could feel anything, he said carefully, it would be grateful to have so many people caring about what happens to it. Emily nodded, satisfied with this answer. Madison says her mom stayed up all night working on garage papers. She said her mom hasn't worked this hard on anything since she helped put a bad man in jail last year. The image of Olivia burning the midnight oil on his behalf warmed something in Michael's chest. In the days since the hospital appointment, they had spoken several times, coordinating their approach for the hearing, but he hadn't yet given her an answer about Emily's surgery. Time to get you to school, kiddo, Michael said, gathering his files. Mrs. Parker will pick you up afterward, remember? I might be late, depending on how long the hearing goes. It's okay, Emily assured him, with the resilience that continually amazed him. I'll draw pictures of what I want my room to look like if we have to move, just in case. The matter-of-fact acceptance in her voice, her preparation for either outcome, made Michael's throat tighten with emotion. Children adapted, he knew, often more easily than adults. But he desperately wanted to give Emily stability, to keep the home and business that had become their sanctuary after losing Sarah. The Historical Review Board met in a grand old courtroom in the City Hall building downtown. By the time Michael arrived, the room was already filling with people, preservation advocates, developers, city officials, and to his surprise, a number of familiar faces from the neighborhood. The elderly couple who ran the bakery 2 doors down from his garage waved to him, as did several regular customers. Olivia was at the front of the room, engaged in intense conversation with Dr. Kaplan from the Historical Society. She looked up as Michael approached, her professional demeanor softening into a warm smile. Quite a turnout, Michael observed, taking in the crowded room. Word spread, Olivia explained. It seems your garage has more friends than we realized. The Route 66 Association put out a call to their members, and several preservation groups have sent representatives. The support was unexpected and touching. For years, Michael had focused on his work and his daughter, never realizing how many connections he had formed in the community. People who valued what he did enough to show up on a Friday morning to help save his garage. His appreciation was cut short by the arrival of Alexander and Victor Crane, flanked by a team of attorneys and consultants. Alexander looked immaculately professional in an expensive suit, his expression carefully neutral as he nodded curtly to his sister. Crane, by contrast, made no effort to hide his disdain, surveying the room with the confident air of someone accustomed to getting his way. As everyone took their seats, Michael noticed a surprising addition to Alexander's team. An elderly man in a wheelchair positioned beside him, frail but dignified in appearance. "Who's that with your brother?" Michael whispered to Olivia. She followed his gaze, her eyes widening in surprise. "That's Judge William Bennett, our father. I didn't expect him to be here. He's been in poor health for years and rarely leaves his care facility." Before Michael could respond, the review board members entered and called the hearing to order. The proceedings began with formal presentations from both sides. The Historical Society representatives presenting their findings on the garage's significance, followed by Westfield's team arguing for the economic benefits of their development. Crane spoke with polished persuasiveness about job creation, tax revenue, and urban renewal, painting the Riverside district as a neglected area desperately in need of investment. His presentation was slick and compelling, filled with architectural renderings of gleaming buildings and landscape plazas where tired old businesses currently stood. When it came time for public comments, Michael stepped to the podium, suddenly aware of how out of place he felt in this formal setting. He had prepared remarks about the garage's history and significance, but looking out at the room full of faces, some supportive, others skeptical, he set his notes aside and spoke from the heart. "3 years ago, I lost my wife in a car accident," he began, his voice steady despite the painful memory. "In the aftermath, when everything felt broken, I threw myself into restoration work, taking things that were damaged and making them whole again. It wasn't just about fixing cars, it was about proving that broken things could be repaired, that what seems lost can sometimes be saved." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "That garage isn't just a building or a business to me. It's where my daughter learned to be brave again after losing her mother. It's where I rebuilt my life one carburetor, one transmission, one restoration at a time. And I've recently learned it's also where two families' histories intersect, the Reynolds and the Bennetts, connected through a place that has served this community for over 60 years. Michael glanced at Olivia, drawing strength from her encouraging nod. "I understand progress. I understand change. But I also understand value that can't be measured in dollars or square footage. That garage represents craftsmanship, continuity, and community. Qualities that are increasingly rare and worth preserving, not just for my sake or my daughter's, but for everyone who believes some things deserve to endure." As he returned to his seat, a murmur of approval rippled through the preservation supporters. Even some of the board members seemed moved by his words. Olivia squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by her brother, whose expression tightened in response. The hearing continued with technical arguments about zoning regulations and preservation criteria. Dr. Kaplan presented compelling evidence of the garage's historical significance, including photographs of it as one of the original Route 66 service stations and documentation of its continuous operations since the 1950s. Westfield's attorneys countered with arguments about property rights and development needs, questioning whether sentimental attachment to an old building should supersede economic progress for the entire neighborhood. As the presentations concluded, the board chair announced they would take a 30-minute recess before deliberating and rendering their decision. People began filing out of the courtroom for a break, the tension in the air palpable. In the hallway, Michael found himself face to face with Alexander Bennett, who had stepped away from his team to approach him directly. "Reynolds," Alexander acknowledged with a nod that wasn't entirely hostile. "You spoke well in there. Passionate without being melodramatic. A difficult balance to strike." "Thank you," Michael replied cautiously, unsure where this conversation was heading. Alexander glanced toward his father, who was being attended to by an aide nearby. My father insisted on coming today. He hasn't taken an interest in family business in years. But when he heard about this case, about the garage's connection to my grandfather, he was determined to be here. This information surprised Michael. I didn't realize he knew about the situation. Neither did I, Alexander admitted. Apparently, Olivia visited him earlier this week. She showed him the photographs and told him the whole story. He paused, something shifting in his expression. My father remembers the garage from his childhood. He says Thomas used to take him there on Saturdays, let him hand over tools while he worked on cars. It was before the law firm, before the Bennett name meant anything in this city. The personal connection seemed to have affected Alexander, humanizing what had previously been just another business transaction to him. Your sister cares deeply about your family's legacy, Michael observed. Yes, Alexander agreed, his tone thoughtful. Though we sometimes disagree about what that legacy should be. He straightened, professional demeanor returning. Good luck with the board's decision, Reynolds. Whatever happens, you've certainly made your case compelling. With that, Alexander returned to his team, leaving Michael to wonder if perhaps the man wasn't as coldly calculating as he had initially seemed. The recess ended all too quickly, and everyone filed back into the courtroom. The board chair called for order, then delivered the news they had all been waiting for. After reviewing the evidence presented today, along with the written recommendations from the State Historical Society and the Route 66 Association, this board has determined that the property at 1427 Riverside Avenue, currently operating as Reynolds Restoration and Repair, meets the criteria for historical designation under City Ordinance 47.2 and State Preservation Statute 18.6. A cheer went up from the preservation supporters, quickly silenced by the chair's gavel. However, she continued, we also recognize the economic development concerns raised by Westfield Developments. Therefore, our ruling includes specific provisions. The original structure must be preserved in its entirety, but the development may proceed around it, incorporating the historical building into the new design. Both parties will have 30 days to submit revised plans consistent with this decision. The ruling was a compromise, not everything Michael had hoped for, but enough to save the garage itself. The question of how a small auto shop would function surrounded by upscale retail remained unanswered, but it was a victory nonetheless. Olivia turned to him, eyes bright with triumph. We did it! The building is saved! Thanks to you, Michael replied, the gratitude he felt extending far beyond the legal assistance she had provided. As the crowd began to disperse, Michael noticed an unexpected interaction across the room. Judge Bennett had wheeled himself over to where Victor Crane stood conferring with Westfield's attorneys. Though Michael couldn't hear the conversation, the elderly judge's expression was severe, and Crane looked increasingly uncomfortable as the exchange continued. Alexander joined them briefly, then approached Michael and Olivia with an expression that was difficult to read. It seems our father has taken a particular interest in Mr. Crane's business practices, he informed them. He's requesting a full audit of the Riverside acquisition process, with particular attention to the methods used to pressure property owners. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Dad still has considerable influence with the State Bar Association and the District Attorney's Office. Indeed, Alexander replied dryly. A fact Victor is being reminded of quite forcefully at the moment. He hesitated, then added, I've decided to buy out Crane's interest in the project. His approach to business isn't compatible with the Bennett name, as our father has rather bluntly pointed out. The news was unexpected, suggesting a shift in the project's direction. Before they could discuss it further, Alexander's phone rang. He checked the screen, then excused himself to take the call. Did you know your father would intervene like this? Michael asked Olivia once they were alone. She shook her head, a hint of wonder in her expression. Not exactly. I hoped showing him the connection to his father's legacy might soften his position on the preservation issue, but I never expected him to take on Crane directly. Dad was a feared judge in his day, known for his ethical standards and zero tolerance for corner cutting. I guess some things never change. Their conversation was interrupted by Alexander's return, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. Olivia, Michael, that was the architect for the Riverside project. In light of the board's decision, I'd like to propose an alternative approach. He took a deep breath, as if the words didn't come easily. Rather than trying to work around the garage, what if we made it a centerpiece of the development? a functioning restoration shop that also serves as a Route 66 historical exhibit and classic car showcase. The suggestion caught them both by surprise. "You want to feature the garage?" Michael asked, not entirely trusting this sudden change of heart. "From a business perspective, it makes sense," Alexander explained. "The Route 66 connection gives the development unique character and tourist appeal. We've been looking for a distinctive angle to set this project apart from standard retail developments. This could be it." Olivia studied her brother skeptically. "And this sudden inspiration has nothing to do with Dad's intervention?" Alexander's mouth quirked in a reluctant smile. "Let's say it helped clarify my thinking about the kind of legacy I want to build versus the one our grandfather established." He turned to Michael. "You'd maintain ownership and operation of the business, with expanded space for restoration work in the rear. The front would be redesigned as a showcase area open to the public, featuring your completed projects and historical displays." The concept was intriguing. Intriguing, a way to preserve not just the building but the work itself while potentially expanding his business in a direction he hadn't considered. "I'd need to see detailed plans," Michael said cautiously, "and have legal guarantees about my operational independence." "Of course," Alexander agreed. "We can draft terms that protect your interests while aligning with the development's overall vision. Olivia can review everything to ensure you're properly represented." He extended his hand. "What do you say, partners rather than adversaries?" Michael hesitated, then accepted the handshake. It wasn't complete trust. That would take time to build. But it was a beginning, a foundation for something that could benefit them all. As they left the courthouse, Olivia pulled Michael aside. "Are you okay with this? Alexander can be persuasive, but you don't have to agree to anything you're not comfortable with." "I think it could work," Michael replied thoughtfully. "It's actually not far from what I've dreamed of doing someday, creating a space that celebrates the craftsmanship of these classic machines, educates people about automotive history. I just never had the resources to make it happen." Olivia smiled, relief evident in her expression. "Then I'm happy for you." She checked her watch. "I should get back to the office. There's paperwork to file to formalize the historical designation." "Before you go," Michael said, catching her hand, "I've made a decision about Emily's surgery. I'd like to pursue the less invasive option." Olivia's eyes widened. "That's wonderful news, Michael, but what about the cost?" "I'm still figuring that out," he admitted. "But what you said at the hospital about showing Emily that sometimes strength means accepting help, it's been on my mind. And Sarah would have wanted what's best for her, regardless of how we made it happen." The afternoon sunlight caught in Olivia's hair as she looked up at him, genuine happiness in her expression. "I'm glad, Michael, truly." "I still can't accept charity," he clarified. "But maybe there's a middle ground, a loan perhaps, with clear terms for repayment. Something that preserves my independence while acknowledging that I can't do this alone." "We'll figure it out together," Olivia promised, the simple statement carrying a weight of possibility that extended far beyond Emily's medical needs. As she walked away, Michael felt as if a burden had been lifted. Not removed entirely, but shared in a way that made it bearable. The garage was saved, Emily's surgery would take the less invasive route, and somehow amid all the chaos and conflict, he had found connections he hadn't been looking for but desperately needed. The next weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Alexander proved true to his word, bringing in architects who specialized in historical preservation to develop plans that would maintain the garage's integrity while integrating it into the larger development. Michael found himself genuinely excited about the possibilities, envisioning a space where his restoration work could reach a wider audience, where the craftsmanship he valued could be appreciated by more than just classic car enthusiasts. Emily's pre-surgical preparations went smoothly, with the less invasive procedure scheduled for the following month. The financial arrangements had been worked out as Michael had requested, a formal loan with reasonable terms, documented legally to maintain the clarity he needed. It wasn't pride, he had explained to Olivia, but a lesson he wanted to teach Emily about responsibility and integrity. On a golden Saturday afternoon in late October, Michael was closing up the garage when Olivia's Mercedes pulled into the driveway, Madison waving enthusiastically from the passenger seat. Behind them came a second car, a rental that Emily and Mrs. Parker had taken to the airport to pick up Olivia's mother, who was visiting for the weekend. We brought picnic, Madison announced as she bounded from the car, clutching a wicker basket almost as big as she was. Mom said we're celebrating, but she wouldn't tell me what. Michael raised an eyebrow at Olivia, who shrugged with a mysterious smile. I thought the occasion deserved something special. Emily emerged from the second car, racing to greet Madison with their now customary elaborate handshake, a complicated series of high fives, fist bumps, and finger wiggles that never failed to make the adults smile. Dad, we got Mrs. Bennett from the airport, and she told me stories about when Madison's mom was little, Emily reported excitedly. Did you know she used to take apart clocks to see how they worked? Just like I do with the car parts you give me. Olivia's mother, Catherine, approached with the elegant grace that seemed to run in the Bennett family. In her 60s, but still striking, she had Olivia's intelligent eyes and direct manner. So you're the famous Michael Reynolds, she said, extending her hand. I've heard quite a lot about you from both my daughter and my granddaughter. It's nice to finally put a face to the name. Michael welcomed her warmly, touched that Olivia had wanted him to meet her mother. It felt like a significant step, an acknowledgement that whatever was developing between them had reached a level that warranted family introductions. The impromptu picnic was set up in the small grassy area behind the garage, where Michael sometimes took lunch breaks on nice days. The girls spread out a blanket while Olivia unpacked containers of food far more sophisticated than Michael's usual sandwiches. So what exactly are we celebrating? Michael asked as they settled onto the blanket, the autumn sun warming them despite the crisp air. Olivia exchanged a glance with her mother, then reached into her purse and withdrew an official-looking letter. This arrived yesterday. I wanted to share it in person. Michael opened the envelope to find letterhead from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. As he read, his eyes widened in surprise. They've approved a preservation grant for the garage restoration, he said, looking up in disbelief. $25,000 for historical research, documentation, and authentic restoration of the original Route 66 service station elements. The application was a long shot, Olivia admitted. They only fund a handful of projects each year. But with the documentation we gathered for the historical designation hearing, plus letters of support from the Route 66 Association and the State Historical Society, this is incredible, Michael said, genuinely moved by the effort she had put into securing this opportunity. It changes everything for how we can approach the restoration. And, Catherine added with a knowing smile, I believe it coincidentally matches a certain medical expense you have been concerned about. Michael looked between mother and daughter, understanding dawning. The grant would cover the case of historically accurate restoration, freeing up his own funds for Emily's surgery, a solution that maintained his independence while solving the financial challenge. You orchestrated this, he said to Olivia, admiration in his voice. She shook her head. I just found the opportunity and submitted the application. The garage's historical significance did the rest. It deserved to be recognized and preserved properly. As the adults discussed the implications of the grant, the girls had wandered a few yards away, heads bent together over Madison's sketchpad. Their giggles and whispered consultations suggested a secret project in the works. What are you two plotting over there? Olivia called, her tone light with affection. Madison looked up, excitement written across her face. We're designing our family crest. Your what? Michael asked, amused by the unexpected answer. Emily bounced over, dragging Madison with her to show the adults their creation. The drawing showed a shield divided into quadrants, each containing elements that represented their blended interests. A classic car, an artist's palette, a law book, and a heart with a small bandage on it. See, it has things from all of us, Emily explained earnestly. The car for Dem, the art stuff for Madison, the law book for Ms. Bennett, and the heart is for me because of my surgery, but also because everyone says I have a big heart like my mom did. The innocent creation, this imagining of a combined family unit, created a moment of tender awkwardness among the adults. Catherine hid a smile behind her hand, while Michael and Olivia exchanged glances that held equal parts surprise and something deeper, something neither was quite ready to name. It's beautiful, girls, Olivia said finally, her voice gentle, very thoughtful to include something for each of us. Can we hang it in the garage, Madison asked, so everyone can see it's a special place for both our families? Of course, Michael agreed, his throat tight with emotion. It'll have a place of honor. As the afternoon continued, Michael found himself watching Olivia with her mother and daughter. The easy affection between them, the gentle teasing, the shared references to family memories. It reminded him of what Emily had lost when Sarah died, the maternal presence that no father, however devoted, could fully replace. Yet here they were, creating something new. Not a replacement for what was lost, but a different kind of connection, unexpected and valuable in its own right. The girls had seen it first, with the unfiltered perception of childhood. The adults were still finding their way, navigating complicated histories and responsibilities, but moving steadily towards something that felt increasingly right. Later, as they packed up the picnic and prepared to leave, Olivia lingered behind while her mother took the girls to the car. "I hope the surprise wasn't overstepping," she said, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "I know how important your independence is to you." "It was perfect," Michael assured her. "Thoughtful and practical, just like you." He hesitated, then added, "And bringing your mother to meet us, that meant a lot, especially to Emily." Olivia smiled, the setting sun casting a golden glow across her features. "Mom's been curious about the mechanic who restored more than just cars, as she puts it. She likes you, by the way. She can be a tough judge of character, so that's high praise." "I'm honored," Michael replied with a smile. "And what about you, counselor? What's your verdict on this mechanic?" The question was light, but the undercurrent was anything but casual. They had been dancing around the growing connection between them for weeks, both cautious for their own reasons. Michael's lingering grief, Olivia's past relationship wounds, their shared concern for their daughter's emotional well-being. Olivia stepped closer, her expression softening. "My professional opinion is that he's stubborn, principled to a fault, and far too modest about his many talents." Her voice lowered slightly. "My personal opinion is that he's the most genuine man I've met in a very long time, and I'm increasingly glad that his garage needed saving." The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. Michael reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, a simple gesture that felt monumental after years of keeping everyone at arm's length. "Emily's surgery is next month," he said quietly. "Once that's behind us, once I know she's okay, maybe we could have dinner. Just the two of us this time." Olivia's smile was answer enough, but she added, "I'd like that very much." From the car, Madison's voice called out, "Mom, Grandma says if you don't hurry, she's going to start telling Emily embarrassing stories about when you were little." The moment broke with shared laughter, the easy comfort between them undiminished by the interruption. As Olivia turned to leave, Michael caught her hand, squeezing it gently, a promise of conversations to come, of possibilities unfolding. 6 months later, a new sign hung above the entrance to what had once been simply Reynolds Restoration and Repair. Now it read Route 66 Classic Restoration and Museum, with Michael's name still prominently featured as Master Restorer and Curator. The building had been carefully renovated, preserving its historical elements while creating a showcase space that drew visitors from across the country. Behind the public areas, Michael's workshop had been expanded and modernized, allowing him to take on more complex restoration projects while training a small team of apprentices in the craft he loved. The business was thriving in ways he had never imagined, combining his passion for restoration with a new role educating others about automotive history. Emily, fully recovered from her successful surgery, had become an unofficial tour guide, delighting visitors with her encyclopedic knowledge of classic cars and the history of Route 66. Her heart, now properly repaired, seemed to have room for all the new people and experiences that had entered their lives. On a perfect spring evening, Michael closed up the museum portion of the building and headed to the private garage area in the back, where a special project awaited him. The 1960 Mercedes 220 SE Cabriolet sat gleaming under the lights, its restoration finally complete after months of meticulous work. He had insisted on doing this one himself, refusing help even from his most skilled apprentices. Every component had been carefully restored or sourced from specialists around the world, returning the classic car to its original glory while incorporating subtle modern improvements for safety and reliability. As he ran his hand along the flawless finish, Michael heard the side door open. Olivia entered, looking elegant as always, though she had long since relaxed the formal business attire around him. "Is it ready?" she asked, excitement evident in her voice. "See for yourself," Michael invited, stepping aside to give her a full view of her grandfather's beloved car. Olivia circled the Mercedes slowly, taking in every detail with appreciative eyes. Michael, it's absolutely beautiful. Grandpa would have been speechless. I found something during the restoration, Michael said, opening the glove compartment. It was tucked behind the original owner's manual. He handed her a faded photograph she hadn't seen before. Thomas Bennett standing beside the car the day he purchased it, his young son beside him, both beaming with pride. Dad never mentioned being there when Grandpa bought it, Olivia said softly, tracing the image with her finger. There's an inscription on the back, Michael noted. Olivia turned the photograph over to find her grandfather's handwriting. To William and Edward, may this remind you that beautiful things take time and care to build, whether they're cars, careers, or families. Some treasures are worth the wait. Thomas Bennett, 1960. Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes as she read the words aloud. He was leaving a message for both his son and my father's childhood best friend, your grandfather. The connections between our families go back further than we realized, Michael observed, slipping his arm around her waist. She leaned into him naturally, their months together having created an easy physical comfort between them. Do you think they somehow knew that someday their grandchildren would find each other through this garage? I doubt it, Michael replied honestly, but I like to think they'd approve of how things turned out. From outside came the sound of children's laughter. Emily and Madison playing in the small garden area that had been created as part of the renovation. Their friendship had only strengthened with time, unaffected by the evolving relationship between their parents. The girls are getting impatient for their surprise, Olivia noted. Should we tell them? Michael nodded, reaching into his pocket for the keys to the Mercedes. Let's take Thomas's car for its first drive since the restoration, all four of us together. As they walked hand in hand toward the garden, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from strangers on opposite sides of a development dispute to partners in preservation, from single parents struggling alone to a blended family finding their way forward together. The garage had been saved, transformed into something that honored its history while embracing a new future. In many ways, the same could be said for the people whose lives had become intertwined through their efforts to preserve it. Like the vintage cars Michael restored, they had found that sometimes the most beautiful results came from carefully rebuilding what had been broken, honoring the original design while making improvements that allowed for a smoother journey ahead. As Emily spotted them and ran forward, Madison close behind, Michael knew that some things didn't need fixing. They just needed the right connections to make them whole again. When you find yourself at a crossroads, faced with difficult choices and uncertain paths, remember that sometimes the journey itself reveals the destination. The road ahead may have unexpected turns, but with the right companions by your side, even the most challenging road can lead to beautiful destinations. Thank you for joining us for this story of restoration, connection, and second chances. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need a reminder that broken things, whether they're cars, buildings, or hearts, can often be rebuilt stronger than before.